Hey YouTube, Shelko04 here. First, do me a favor and subscribe and or leave comments. It's really appreciated. It helps me judge what people are interested in. Second off, my brother suggested that I be a little more personable and maybe throw in a joke here and there now and then. So, why did the chicken cross the road? The answer is because of climate change. What's it matter anyway? We'll all be dead soon enough. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about homesteading and the option of building a house versus buying something and making it work. Now, we've looked at dozens of properties at this point. Some vacant land, some old farms. And these old farms aren't in town, they're up in a holler at the end of the road. So, here's my thought. They're both about the same price. The hardship about buying just a vacant piece of land is you got to put in a well, you got to put in septic or something. So there's that added expense. Now, compare that to a pre-existing farm. You don't know what you're inheriting, so you may have to go back and redo that stuff anyway. One thing that I've been a little curious about and I've been considering with regards to the septic issue is composting toilets. I know that's a nasty subject that you can Google on at your own leisure and get more information about. But the reason behind that is because some of the properties that we've looked at, septic doesn't work. And the solution there is what they call lagooning. Now, I had never heard of this until we talked to somebody a few months back, but basically, lagooning means that you've got a septic tank, but instead of a leach field, you've got a leach pond. Now, you dig a pit over there, and all of your liquids go into this pond, and they want you to put a fence around it. And the idea is that the pond will evaporate, and that surface water from rain and stuff will dilute the liquids in there, and that it won't smell that bad. Sure, that's what I think. Won't smell that bad, show me. Anyway, so there's that. Now, if you go and buy something that's pre-existing, like an old farm, one thing that we've discovered is that a lot of counties aren't set up with a local dump or the provision to get rid of your stuff, which leaves it entirely on you to dispose of that stuff. Unfortunately, what a lot of people do is they wind up burning stuff in place, or if they've got enough land, over there becomes the dump pile. So that's something to be aware of. I'm not too big on that because first off, I don't like the idea of burning the crap and putting it all up in the air. And then second off, if you do create a big burn pile, you've got all that stuff leaching into the ground when it rains. So that's not really a good idea, especially when you consider an old house probably has asbestos in the floor tile, if nothing else, and it's probably got lead paint on it, if nothing else. So, there are those issues to consider. Now, if, on the other hand, if you're going to build something, the hardship initially is distance to a lumberyard. And what we discovered is that, the small town has like the True Value or the Ace Hardware, and you can go there and pay a premium. But for what we've been looking for, the closest Lowe's or Home Depot is, 25, 35 miles away. So in that case, the solution would be, I think, to buy a trailer, a flat, probably a 12-foot trailer, and carry as much, and make a run, and load it up with as much crap as that trailer will carry, and have a good shopping list, and maybe do that once a week if you're going to build a house. Now, the other thing I discovered about old houses and with the idea of retrofitting something is foundations are entertaining. We looked at one property in West Kentucky that some of the foundation was there and was cinder blocks and stuff like that, and some of the foundation was poured in place, and that was okay. And yet some of the foundation was just the house sitting on the ground, wicking moisture up into it. And so that was a deal killer there. Now, the other thing that we saw as far as impromptu foundations was big honking field stones. Four pylons in each corner, and then another pylon midway, halfway in the front of the house, and halfway on the sides, and halfway in the back. And those were holding up the house, basically, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet off the ground, so they've got some ventilation underneath there. Because of settling, that house was pretty sad looking. But it raises an interesting thought. If you're going to buy something that has a pre-existing structure on it, it might be worth the time to go and try to disassemble as much of that as you can. The reason is, this house that I'm talking about, the big honking fieldstones, when I got up underneath there and looked at all the other framing underneath the house, first off, it wasn't rotted or moldy or anything like that, probably because of the ventilation. But second off, it was tremendously giant hand-hewn oak logs. Stuff you couldn't buy anymore, let alone find anymore, let alone get anywhere. So stuff like that would be worth holding on to and using maybe as, if you're going to make something decorative inside the house as far as faux columns or beams or stuff like that. There's a lot of that resource there. So if you're going to disassemble a house, my idea would be to salvage as much of the wood as possible. Put that aside, put that in a shipping container where you're going to gas it for bugs or something, but just put that over there. The stuff that you wouldn't want to burn, take into town and get rid of little by little at the local garbage. Towns have garbage service, so stuff like plastic and the vinyl flooring and kitchen countertops and stuff like that, I would do that with. The things that you don't want, that are still of issue to get rid of, I'm not that adverse to the idea of putting some stuff in the back of the other property, and that's the stuff that'll decompose and won't be an environmental threat later on down the road. Some of that may be things like sheetrock, roofing stuff like that. Again, if you're going to build, though, now when we're looking at property with the idea of building, the big priority for me is I don't want to be in any place where there are any building codes. And that's not because I'm looking to create some tar paper shack with substandard everything. It's exactly the opposite, because when I build something, I overbuild it and over-engineer it. The issue is, I don't want to get involved in the local bureaucracy and have to pay a premium for some guy to come from 30 miles away to do the plumbing or the electrical or in some cases even just the roofing. These are all things that I think I've got the skills enough to do myself, and so living in an area that doesn't have codes is something that we're seeking out. The one thing that I do look at when considering a property is the proximity to a cement company, and that's because I either want a slab, or I want a slab with a knee wall so I've got a crawl space, or I want a full basement, again with a slab floor. That's something, although I've done it before, I'd rather not get involved with as far as pouring cement, and that would be something that I would farm out. But other than that, once you had the slab down and the knee wall up, I at least would feel comfortable putting the walls and the roof and everything on and going from there. So it's sort of I don't have any easy answer here. I'm giving you more an idea as far as what our thoughts have been along the way. Buying something that's pre-existing obviously has the drawbacks of having to work around somebody else's vision and dream. Or building something yourself, obviously you get it exactly the way you want it, but there's the time factor and the cost and the travel factor. So just giving you an idea as far as what we're thinking, but I don't have any answers for you. Again, do me a favor, subscribe, leave comments, and we'll talk to you later. Shelka04 out. Thanks.